Tanzania. Officially, the United Republic of Tanzania is a country in East Africa within the African Great Lakes region. It is bordered by Uganda to the northwest, Kenya to the northeast, the Indian Ocean to the east, Mozambique and Malawi to the south, Zambia to the southwest, and Rwanda, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo to the west. Mount Kilimanjaro, Africa's highest mountain, is in northeastern Tanzania. According to the 2022 national census, Tanzania has a population of at least 67.4 million. Many important hominid fossils have been found in Tanzania, such as 6-million-year-old Pliocene hominid fossils. In the Stone and Bronze Age, prehistoric migrations into Tanzania included southern Cushitic speakers who moved south from present-day Ethiopia, Eastern Cushitic people who moved into Tanzania from north of Lake Turkana about 2,000 and 4,000 years ago, and the southern Nilotes, including the Datug, who originated from the present-day South Sudan, Ethiopia border region between 2,900 and 2,400 years ago. These movements took place at about the same time as the settlement of the Mashariki Bantu from West Africa in the Lake Victoria and Lake Tanganyika areas. In the late 19th century, the mainland came under German rule as German East Africa, and this was followed by British rule after World War I when it was governed as Tanganyika, with the Zanzibar archipelago remaining a separate colonial jurisdiction. Following their respective independence in 1961 and 1963, the two entities merged in 1964 to form the United Republic of Tanzania. Tanganyika joined the British Commonwealth and Tanzania remains a member of the Commonwealth as a unified republic. Today the country is a presidential constitutional republic with the federal capital located in Government City, Dodoma. The former capital, Dar es Salaam, retains most government offices and is the country's largest city, principal port, and leading commercial center. Tanzania is a de facto one-party state with the Democratic Socialist Chama cha Mapinduzi party in power. The country has not experienced major internal strife since independence and is seen as one of the safest and most politically stable on the continent. Tanzania's population comprises about 120 ethnic, linguistic, and religious groups. Christianity is the largest religion in Tanzania, with substantial Muslim and animist minorities. Over 100 languages are spoken in Tanzania, making it the most linguistically diverse country in East Africa. The country does not have a de jure official language, although the national language is Swahili. English is used in foreign trade, in diplomacy, in higher courts, and as a medium of instruction in secondary and higher education, while Arabic is spoken in Zanzibar. Tanzania is mountainous and densely forested in the northeast, where Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa and the highest single freestanding mountain above sea level in the world, is located. 3 of Africa's Great Lakes are partly within Tanzania. To the north and west lie Lake Victoria, Africa's largest lake, and Lake Tanganyika, the continent's deepest lake, known for its unique species of fish. To the south lies Lake Malawi. The eastern shore is hot and humid, with the Zanzibar archipelago just offshore. The Mina Bay Conservation Area is Zanzibar's largest marine protected area. The Kalambo Falls, located on the Kalambo River at the Zambian border, is the second highest uninterrupted waterfall in Africa. Tanzania is one of the most visited tourist destinations for safaris. History. Tanzania is one of the oldest continuously inhabited areas on Earth. Traces of fossil remains of humans and hominids date back to the Quaternary era. The Old Ube Gorge, in the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, features a collection with remnants of tools that document the development and use of transitional technology. The indigenous populations of Eastern Africa are thought to be the linguistically isolated Hadza and Sanda hunter-gatherers of Tanzania. The first wave of migration was by southern Cushitic speakers who moved south from Ethiopia and Somalia into Tanzania. They are ancestral to the Araku, Gorowa, and Burunj. Based on linguistic evidence, there may also have been two movements into Tanzania of Eastern Cushitic people at about 4,000 and 2,000 years ago, originating from north of Lake Turkana. Archaeological evidence supports the conclusion that southern Nilotes, including the Datug, moved south from the present-day South Sudan-Ethiopia border region into central northern Tanzania between 2,900 and 2,400 years ago. These movements took place at approximately the same time as the settlement of the iron-making Mashariki Bantu from West Africa in the Lake Victoria and Lake Tanganyika areas, as part of the centuries-long Bantu expansion. The Bantu peoples brought with them the West African planting tradition and the primary staple of yams. They subsequently migrated out of these regions across the rest of Tanzania between 2,300 and 1,700 years ago. Eastern Nilotic peoples, including the Maasai, represent a more recent migration from present-day South Sudan within the past 500 to 1,500 years. The people of Tanzania have been associated with the production of iron and steel. The Pare people were the main producers of sought-after iron for peoples who occupied the mountain regions of northeastern Tanzania. The Haya people on the western shores of Lake Victoria invented a type of high-heat blast furnace, which allowed them to forge carbon steel at temperatures exceeding 1,820 degrees Celsius more than 1,500 years ago. Travelers and merchants from the Persian Gulf and India have visited the East African coast since early in the first millennium AD. Islam was practiced by some on the Swahili coast as early as the 8th or 9th century AD. Bantu speakers built farming and trade villages along the Tanzanian coast from the outset of the first millennium. Archaeological finds at Fukukani, on the northwest coast of Zanzibar, indicate a settled agricultural and fishing community from the 6th century CE at the latest. The considerable amount of dog found indicates timber buildings, and shell beads, bead grinders, and iron slag have been found at the site. There is evidence for limited engagement in long-distance trade. A small amount of imported pottery has been found, less than 1% of total pottery finds, mostly from the Gulf and dated to the 5th to 8th century. The similarity to contemporary sites such as Mkokoteni and Dar es Salaam indicate a unified group of communities that developed into the first center of coastal maritime culture. The coastal towns appear to have been engaged in Indian Ocean and inland African trade at this early period. Trade rapidly increased in importance and quantity beginning in the mid-8th century, and by the close of the 10th century Zanzibar was one of the central Swahili trading towns. Growth in Egyptian and Persian shipping from the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf revitalized Indian Ocean trade, particularly after the Fatimid Caliphate relocated to Fustat. Swahili agriculturalists built increasingly dense settlements to tap into trade, these forming the earliest Swahili city-states. The Vendashona kingdoms of Mapungubwe and Zimbabwe in South Africa and Zimbabwe, respectively, became a major producer of gold around this same period. Economic, social, and religious power was increasingly vested in Kilwa, Tanzania's major medieval city-state. Kilwa controlled a number of smaller ports stretching down to modern-day Mozambique. Sofala became the major gold emporium and Kilwa grew rich off the trade, lying at the southern end of the Indian Ocean monsoons. Kilwa's major rivals lay to the north, in modern-day Kenya, namely Mombasa and Malindi. Kilwa remained the major power in East Africa until the arrival of the Portuguese at the end of the 15th century. Claiming the coastal strip, Omani Sultan Said bin Sultan moved his capital to Zanzibar city in 1840. During this time, Zanzibar became the center for the East African slave trade. Between 65 and 90% of the Arab Swahili population of Zanzibar was enslaved. One of the most infamous slave traders on the East African coast was Tiputip, who was the grandson of an enslaved African. The Nyamwezi slave traders operated under the leadership of Misiri and Mirambo. According to Timothy Insall, figures record the exporting of 718,000 slaves from the Swahili coast during the 19th century, and the retention of 769,000 on the coast. In the 1890s, slavery was abolished. In 1863, the Holy Ghost Mission established an early reception center and depot at Zanzibar. In 1877, responding to appeals of Henry Stanley following his Trans-Africa expedition, and permission being given to Stanley by King Mutsi of Buganda, the Church Missionary Society sent missionaries Edward Baxter and Henry Cole to establish inland missions. In 1885, Germany conquered the regions that are now Tanzania and incorporated them into German East Africa. The Supreme Council of the 1919 Paris Peace Conference awarded all of Guinea to Britain on May 7, 1919, over the strenuous objections of Belgium. The British Colonial Secretary, Alfred Milner, and Belgium's Minister Plenipotentiary to the conference, Pierre Orts, then negotiated the Anglo-Belgian Agreement of May 30, 1919, where Britain ceded the northwestern Guinea provinces of Rwanda and Burundi to Belgium. The conference's Commission on Mandates ratified this agreement on July 16, 1919. The Supreme Council accepted the agreement on August 7, 1919. On July 12, 1919, the Commission on Mandates agreed that the small Kayanga Triangle south of the Rovuma River would be given to Portuguese Mozambique, with it eventually becoming part of independent Mozambique. The Commission reasoned that Germany had virtually forced Portugal to cede the triangle in 1894. The Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919, although the treaty did not take effect until January 10, 1920. On that date, the Guinea was transferred officially to Britain, Belgium, and Portugal. Also on that date, Tanganyika became the name of the British territory. In the mid-1920s, the British implemented a system of indirect rule in Tanzania. The Maji Maji Rebellion, between 1905 and 1907, was an uprising of several African tribes in German East Africa against the colonial authorities, in particular because of forced labor and deportation of certain tribes. It was the subject of a bloody repression, which combined with famine caused 300,000 deaths among the population, out of a Tanganyika population of about 4 million. During World War II, about 100,000 people from Tanganyika joined the Allied forces and were among the 375,000 Africans who fought with those forces. Tanganyikans fought in units of the King's African Rifles during the East African Campaign in Somalia and Abyssinia against the Italians, in Madagascar against the Vichy French during the Madagascar Campaign, and in Burma against the Japanese during the Burma Campaign. Tanganyika was an important source of food during this war, and its export income increased greatly compared to the pre-war years of the Great Depression. Wartime demand, however, caused increased commodity prices and massive inflation within the colony. In 1954, Julius Nyerere transformed an organization into the politically oriented Tanganyika African National Union. TANU's main objective was to achieve national sovereignty for Tanganyika. A campaign to register new members was launched, and within a year, TANU had become the leading political organization in the country. Nyerere became Minister of British-administered Tanganyika in 1960 and continued as Prime Minister when Tanganyika became independent in 1961. British rule came to an end on December 9, 1961. Elizabeth II, who had acceded to the British throne in 1952, continued to reign through the first year of Tanganyika's independence, but now distinctly as Queen of Tanganyika, represented by the Governor-General. Tanganyika also joined the British Commonwealth in 1961. On December 9, 1962, Tanganyika became a democratic republic under an executive president. After the Zanzibar Revolution overthrew the Arab dynasty in neighboring Zanzibar, accompanied with the slaughter of thousands of Arab Zanzibaris, which had become independent in 1963, the archipelago merged with mainland Tanganyika on April 26, 1964. The new country was then named the United Republic of Tanganyika and Zanzibar. On October 29 of the same year, the country was renamed the United Republic of Tanzania. The union of the two hitherto separate regions was controversial among many Zanzibaris but was accepted by both the Nyerere government and the revolutionary government of Zanzibar owing to shared political values and goals. Following Tanganyika's independence and unification with Zanzibar leading to the state of Tanzania, President Nyerere emphasized a need to construct a national identity for the citizens of the new country. To achieve this, Nyerere provided what is regarded as one of the most successful cases of ethnic repression and identity transformation in Africa. With more than 130 languages spoken within its territory, Tanzania is one of the most ethnically diverse countries in Africa. Despite this obstacle, ethnic divisions remained rare in Tanzania when compared to the rest of the continent, notably its immediate neighbor, Kenya. Furthermore, since its independence, Tanzania has displayed more political stability than most African countries, particularly due to Nyerere's ethnic repression methods. In 1967, Nyerere's first presidency took a turn to the left after the Arusha Declaration, which codified a commitment to socialism as well as Pan-Africanism. After the declaration, banks and many large industries were nationalized. Tanzania was also aligned with China, which from 1970 to 1975 financed and helped build the 1,860-kilometer-long Tazara Railway from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, to Kaparimposhi, Zambia. Nonetheless, from the late 1970s, Tanzania's economy took a turn for the worse, in the context of an international economic crisis affecting both developed and developing economies. In 1978, the neighboring Uganda, under the leadership of Idi Amin, invaded Tanzania. This disastrous invasion would culminate in Tanzania invading Uganda with the aid of Ugandan rebels and deposing Idi Amin as a result. However, the war severely damaged Tanzania's economy. Through the 1980s, conservation-oriented national parks such as Serengeti and Kilimanjaro, with Mount Kilimanjaro as the tallest freestanding summit on Earth, were included on the UNESCO World Heritage List. From the mid-1980s, the regime financed itself by borrowing from the International Monetary Fund and underwent some reforms. Since then, Tanzania's gross domestic product per capita has grown and poverty has been reduced, according to a report by the World Bank. In 1992, the Constitution of Tanzania was amended to allow multiple political parties. In Tanzania's first multi-party elections, held in 1995, the ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi won 186 of the 232 elected seats in the National Assembly, and Benjamin Mkapa was elected as president. The presidents of Tanzania since independence have been Julius Nyerere (1962–1985), Ali Hassan Mwinyi (1985–1995), Benjamin Mkapa (1995–2005), Jakaya Kikwete (2005–2015), John Magufuli (2015–2021), and Samia Hassan Suluhu since 2021. After the long tenure of President Nyerere, the constitution has a term limit. A president can serve a maximum of 2 terms. Each term is 5 years. Every president has represented the ruling party Chama cha Mapinduzi. President Magufuli won a landslide victory and re-election in October 2020. According to the opposition, the election was full of fraud and irregularities. On March 17, 2021, President John Magufuli died from heart complications while in office. Magufuli's vice president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, became Tanzania's first female president. Geography. At 947,403 square kilometers, Tanzania is the 13th largest country in Africa and the 31st largest in the world, ranked between the larger Egypt and smaller Nigeria. It borders Kenya and Uganda to the north, Rwanda, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo to the west, and Zambia, Malawi, and Mozambique to the south. Tanzania is located on the eastern coast of Africa and has an Indian Ocean coastline approximately 1,424 kilometers long. It also incorporates several offshore islands, including Unguja, Pemba, and Mafia. The country is the site of Africa's highest and lowest points, Mount Kilimanjaro, at 5,895 meters above sea level, and the floor of Lake Tanganyika, at 1,471 meters below sea level, respectively. Tanzania is mountainous and densely forested in the northeast, where Mount Kilimanjaro is located. 3 of Africa's Great Lakes are partly within Tanzania. To the north and west lie Lake Victoria, Africa's largest lake, and Lake Tanganyika, the continent's deepest lake, known for its unique species of fish. To the southwest lies Lake Nyasa. Central Tanzania is a large plateau, with plains and arable land. The eastern shore is hot and humid, with the Zanzibar archipelago just offshore. Kalambo Falls in the southwestern region of Rukwa is the second highest uninterrupted waterfall in Africa, and is located near the southeastern shore of Lake Tanganyika on the border with Zambia. The Mina Bay Conservation Area is Zanzibar's largest marine protected area. Politics. Tanzania is a one-party dominant state with the Chama cha Mapinduzi party in power. From its formation until 1992, it was the only legally permitted party in the country. This changed on July 1, 1992, when the constitution was amended. It has held power since independence in 1961, and is the longest-serving ruling party in Africa. John Magufuli won the October 2015 presidential election and secured a two-thirds majority in parliament. The main opposition party in Tanzania since multi-party politics in 1992 is called Chama cha Demokrasia na Maendeleo. The leader of Chademia party is Freeman Mbowe. In Zanzibar, the country's semi-autonomous state, the Alliance for Change and Transparency Wazalendo is considered the main opposition political party. The Constitution of Zanzibar requires the party that comes in second in the polls to join a coalition with the winning party. Wazalendo joined a coalition government with the island's ruling party Chama cha Mapinduzi in December 2020 after Zanzibar disputed elections. In November 2020, Magufuli once again was declared the winner for his second term as president. Election fraud was suspected. The National Electoral Commission announced that Magufuli received 84%, or about 12.5 million votes, and the top opposition candidate, Tundu Lissu, received 13%, about 1.9 million votes. In March 2021, it was announced that Magufuli had died whilst serving in office, meaning that his vice president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, became the country's president. The President of Tanzania and the members of the National Assembly are elected concurrently by direct popular vote for 5-year terms. The Vice President is elected for a 5-year term at the same time as the President and on the same ticket. Neither the President nor the Vice President may be a member of the National Assembly. The President appoints a Prime Minister from among the members of the National Assembly, subject to confirmation by the Assembly, to serve as the government's leader in the Assembly. The President selects her cabinet from assembly members. Law enforcement in Tanzania is under the executive branch of government and is administered by the Tanzania Police Force. Leadership in world governance initiatives. Tanzania has been one of the signatories of the agreement to convene a convention for drafting a world constitution. As a result, in 1968, for the first time in human history, a World Constituent Assembly convened to draft and adopt the Constitution for the Federation of Earth. Julius Nyerere, then President of Tanzania, signed the agreement to convene a World Constituent Assembly. In 1972, local government on the mainland was abolished and replaced with direct rule from the central government. Local government, however, was reintroduced in the beginning of the 1980s, when the rural councils and rural authorities were re-established. Local government elections took place in 1983, and functioning councils started in 1984. In 1999, a local government reform program was enacted by the National Assembly, setting a comprehensive and ambitious agenda. 4 areas: political decentralization, financial decentralization, administrative decentralization, and changed central-local relations, with the mainland government having overriding powers within the framework of the Constitution. Tanzania is divided into 31 regions, 26 on the mainland and 5 in Zanzibar. The 31 regions are divided into 195 districts, also known as local government authorities. Of those districts, 45 are urban units, which are further classified as 3 city councils, 20 municipal councils, and 22 town councils. The urban units have an autonomous city, municipal, or town council and are subdivided into wards and sub-wards. The non-urban units have an autonomous district council but are subdivided into village councils or township authorities and then into hamlets. The city of Dar es Salaam is unique because it has a city council whose area of jurisdiction overlaps 3 municipal councils. The mayor of the city council is elected by that council. The 20-member city council is composed of 11 persons elected by the municipal councils, 7 members of the National Assembly, and nominated members of parliament under special seats for women. Each municipal council also has a mayor. The city council performs a coordinating role and attends to issues cutting across the 3 municipalities, including security and emergency services. The city of Mwanza has a city council whose areal jurisdiction overlaps 2 municipal councils. Foreign policies and partnerships. Foreign policies of Tanzania are in process of review to replace the current new foreign policy of 2001, which was the first official foreign policy of Tanzania. Before 2001, Tanzanian foreign policy was dictated by the various presidential declarations of Mwalimu Nyerere, specifically Circular No. 2 of 1964, Arusha Declaration, and Policy of Foreign Affairs of 1967. These declarations had focused foreign policy primarily on independence and sovereignty, human rights, and African unity. The current new foreign policy of 2001 was established to better address the end of colonialism and the Cold War, globalization, market economics, and liberalization, and the multi-party state of Tanzania. Its primary focus is economic diplomacy and development. New foreign policy of 2001, which is still used today, has a foundation of 7 principles: sovereignty, liberalism, good neighborliness, African unity, non-alignment, economic diplomacy, and global cooperation for economic development and peace. The primary objectives are outlined as the protection and promotion of cultural and economic interests, establishment of relations with other nations driven by economic interest, economic self-sufficiency, internal and global peace, and regional political and economic integration. A review of current foreign policy is being undertaken by the 6th phase government to replace the current new foreign policy of 2001. Foreign Affairs Minister Liberata Mulamula has stated the new policies will maintain the priority of and non-alignment of the 2001 policy while making additional top priorities the climate change and refocusing economic diplomacy with a greater focus on value-added exports and the digital economy. Tanzania is a member of many international organizations such as the United Nations, African Union, East African Community, and Southern African Development Community among many others. Additionally, due to the strength of Tanzania's non-alignment, unity, and internal peace since independence, Tanzania frequently acts as a mediator and location of treaties and agreements between other nations, such as the Arusha Agreement with Europe, as well as the Arusha Accords with Rwanda and Burundi. The United Nations has a large current and historical presence in Tanzania and acts as an important partner in itself, and associated IGOs and NGOs, in many functions in the country, as well as functions based in Tanzania and implemented throughout the Great Lakes and Africa as a whole. Of the many functions, the UN and Tanzania partner or the UN works with outside countries, most notably human rights and justice courts and reporting, education, development, climate change, health, and wildlife conservation. While the UN primary offices are in Oyster Bay, Dar es Salaam, many other offices, courts, and NGOs are based in Arusha, TZ. The most well-known example is the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda genocide. The African Union consists of 55 nations in Africa. Tanzania is a founding member of the OAU in 2001, and its predecessor the Organization of African Unity by the predecessors of Tanzania, Tanganyika, and Zanzibar, in 1963. The judicial branch of the OAU and its courts are located in Tanzania. Originally the Court of Justice of the African Union, it has been combined with the African Court on Human and People's Rights to form the African Court of Justice and Human Rights, which is located in Arusha. Tanzania ratified and joined the OAU-brokered African Continental Free Trade Area on January 17, 2022, the largest free trade area in the world. The East African Community, consisting of Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, is headquartered in Arusha. Tanzania, along with Kenya and Uganda, is a founding member of the EAC in 2000. Following the German defeat in World War I, Tanzania joined the London-based East African Currency Board that was a customs union and provider of currency for Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya from 1919 to 1948, the East Africa High Commission from 1948 to 1961, and East African Common Services Organization from 1961 to 1966. In 1966 all three countries formed the first East African Community, which lasted until 1976, then the East African Cooperation from 1993 to 2000, before becoming re-established as the East African Community in 2000. The EAC has had a customs union since 2005, with a free trade zone between member states and unified tariffs and trade agreements with non-member states and multinational organizations. The customs union also established a unified organization and sets of rules, such as rules of origin, for all trade within, into, and passing through member states. In 2010 a common market was established within the EAC for the free movement of labor, goods, people, capital, and services, as well as established rights of establishment. The East African Monetary Union is proposed to be established in 2024 that will create a single common currency by the East African Central Bank. From the original re-establishment of the EAC, the final goal for the EAC is always the political federation of all member states. In 2017 all member states adopted the Confederation of EAC as a transitional precursor to the final federation. The Southern African Development Community consists of 16 nations, including all countries of Southern Africa plus Tanzania and the DRC from the Great Lakes. Tanzania is a founding member of SADC in 1994, as well as its predecessor the Frontline States, from 1960 to 1994. While FLS aimed to end apartheid, its successor SADC has the aims of furthering peace and security along with the economic and political integration of member states. Economy and infrastructure. As of 2021, according to the IMF, Tanzania's gross domestic product was an estimated 71 billion, or 218.5 billion on a purchasing power parity basis. GDP per capita was 3,574. From 2009 through to 2013, Tanzania's per capita GDP grew an average of 3.5% per year, higher than any other member of the East African Community and exceeded by only 9 countries in sub-Saharan Africa: the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, Ghana, Lesotho, Liberia, Mozambique, Sierra Leone, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Tanzania's largest trading partners in 2017 for its US $5.3 billion in exports were India, Vietnam, South Africa, Switzerland, and China. Its imports totaled US $8.17 billion, with India, Switzerland, Saudi Arabia, China, and the United Arab Emirates being the biggest partners. Tanzania weathered the Great Recession, which began in late 2008 or early 2009, relatively well. Strong gold prices, bolstering the country's mining industry, and Tanzania's poor integration into global markets helped to insulate the country from the downturn. Since the recession ended, the Tanzanian economy has expanded rapidly thanks to strong tourism, telecommunications, and banking sectors. According to the United Nations Development Programme, however, recent growth in the national economy has benefited only the very few, leaving out the majority of the population. As of the latest survey in 2015-2016, 57.1% of the population is considered to be affected by multidimensional poverty. Tanzania's 2013 Global Hunger Index was worse than any other country in the EAC except Burundi. The proportion of persons who were undernourished in 2010-12 was also worse than any other EAC country except Burundi. In 2020, the World Bank declared the rise of the Tanzanian economy from low-income to lower-middle-income country, as its GNI per capita increased from US $1,020 in 2018 to US $1,080 in 2019. Tanzania's economy grew 4.6% in 2022, and 5.2% in 2023. Religion. Official statistics on religion are unavailable because religious surveys were eliminated from government census reports after 1967. Tanzania's religious field is dominated by Christianity, Islam, and African traditional religions connected to ethnic customs. The word for religion in Swahili, dini, generally apply to the world religions of Christianity and Islam, meaning that followers of traditional African religions are considered to be of no religion. Religious belonging is often ambiguous, with some people adhering to multiple religious identities at the same time, for instance being Christian but also following African traditional rituals, something which suggests that religious boundaries are flexible and contextual. According to a 2014 estimate by the CIA World Fact Book, 61% of the population was Christian, 35% was Muslim, 2% practiced traditional African religions, 1.5% were unaffiliated with any religion, and 0.2% followed other religions. However, according to the Association of Religion Data Archives, 55% of the population is Christian, 31% is Muslim, 11% practices traditional faiths, while 2% of the population is non-religious or adheres to other faiths as of 2020. The ARDA estimates that most Tanzanian Muslims are Sunni, with a small Shia minority, as of 2020. Nearly the entire population of Zanzibar is Muslim. Of Muslims, 16% are Ahmadiyya, 20% are non-denominational Muslims, 40% are Sunni, 20% are Shia, and 4% are Sufi. Most Shias in Tanzania are from Asian Indian descent. Notable Shias of Indian Khoja heritage in Tanzania are Mohammed Tuji or Amir H. Jamal. Within the Christian community, the Catholic Church is the largest group. Among the Protestants, the large number of Lutherans and Moravians points to the German missionary past of the country, while the number of Anglicans point to the British missionary history of Tanganyika. A growing number have adopted Pentecostalism, and Adventists likewise have an increasing presence because of external missionary activities from Scandinavia and the United States, especially during the first part of the 20th century. All of them have had some influence in varying degrees from the Walocole movement, which has also been fertile ground for the spread of charismatic and Pentecostal groups. There are also active communities of other religious groups, primarily on the mainland, such as Buddhists, Hindus, and Baha'is. Languages. More than 100 languages are spoken in Tanzania, making it the most linguistically diverse country in East Africa. Among the languages spoken are 4 of Africa's language families: Bantu, Cushitic, Nilotic, and Khoisan. There are no de jure official languages in Tanzania. Swahili is used in parliamentary debate, in the lower courts, and as a medium of instruction in primary school. English is used in foreign trade, in diplomacy, in higher courts, and as a medium of instruction in secondary and higher education. The Tanzanian government, however, has plans to discontinue English as a language of instruction. In connection with his Ujamaa social policies, President Nyerere encouraged the use of Swahili to help unify the country's many ethnic groups. Approximately 10% of Tanzanians speak Swahili American Samoa a first language, and up to 90% speak it American Samoa a second language. Many educated Tanzanians are trilingual, also speaking English. The widespread use and promotion of Swahili is contributing to the decline of smaller languages in the country. Young children increasingly speak Swahili as a first language, particularly in urban areas. Ethnic community languages other than Kiswahili are not allowed as a language of instruction. Nor are they taught as a subject, though they might be used unofficially in some cases in initial education. Television and radio programs in an ECL are prohibited, and it is nearly impossible to get permission to publish a newspaper in an ECL. There is no Department of Local or Regional African Languages and Literatures at the University of Dar es Salaam. The Sanda people speak a language that may be related to the Khoi languages of Botswana and Namibia, while the language of the Hadzabe people, although it has similar click consonants, is arguably a language isolate. The language of the Iraqi people is Cushitic. Women. Women and men have equality before the law. The government signed the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women in 1985. Nearly 3 out of 10 females reported having experienced sexual violence before the age of 18. The prevalence of female genital mutilation has decreased. Schoolgirls are reinstated back to school after delivery. The Police Force Administration strives to separate the gender desks from normal police operations to enhance confidentiality of the processing of women victims of abuse. Most of the abuses and violence against women and children occurs at the family level. The Constitution of Tanzania requires that women constitute at least 30% of all elected members of National Assembly. The gender differences in education and training have implications later in life of these women and girls. Unemployment is higher for females than for males. The right of a female employee to maternity leave is guaranteed in labor law.